Hey, it's me, Old Dirty Possum. I'm sorry it's been like over a year since we put our last video out, but we've had a lot of work to do and a lot of life stuff going on. So over here, oh, and this is Philip. This is actually his farm. All right, so over here we've got this massive mound with lots of green on it and sticks, and you're probably wondering what that is. That is a giant hugelkultur that we're going to be planting into. We should walk this way so we can hear him as he talks about it.
No, I'll tell you exactly. It's pretty tall because we want to be able to plant strawberries inside of it. So it's about 8 or 9 feet at its highest point. And also we've got cover crops, pretty much everything in there. Hairy vetch, clover, there's soybeans. We cover cropped everything we could think of. There's even tillage radish, which has already died back because it's summer. And there's also brassicas, which put nutrients back into the ground also. You'll see as we come around, we've got our pole barn. This is a work in progress right here. We'll show you one more thing over here. These are our blueberries that are just starting to come in. These were here when we bought the property, but we've actually tended them and cut them back just so they'll give us higher production. And I did put in a very small swale here with wood chips just to retain the water. But you can see these are we've had so much rain here in North Carolina, they are just hanging full. We're just starting to get blueberries, just starting to come in. They're still a little bit underripe, but we are going to have probably anywhere from 3 to 5 gallons of blueberries just on these 4 bushes. And then we added some more this year further down. So this is the blueberry swale that we're going to leave our blueberries at. These are where our dogs sleep occasionally. We've got 3 of the Anatolian shepherds. They're very good for protecting your birds. If you have a lot of birds, we have geese, ducks, chickens, and we're actually getting a lot more geese, ducks, chickens,
guineas.
And guineas. We're going to have probably 20, 30 more guineas on the property. We'll show you the garden. We'll walk over here. This is actually a portable, just to give you an idea, a portable solar power plant. We bought it. It was a speed trap the police use when they give you a ticket. But we went ahead and got an RV battery, one of the really big ones. So we've got portable power for the property. If I need to use power anywhere, I just pull this around and it charges all day. You just put a little inverter on it. It inverts the power to alternating current from direct current, and you have power anywhere you need it.
All right, and here we have a massive pile of logs for future firewood and other building projects. Now you may have remembered that on one of our videos we had a giant pile of mulch, like just tons and tons of mulch. If you come over here, you can see the mulch garden that we built.
Now there's some more mulch that we got. We got that free from a lady. Just pan and shoot that.
In front of the
We wanted to get rid
hugelkultur.
of it and we just carried it over. That's the compost. This is actually
Soil conditioner?
soil conditioner. It's mostly sand and a little bit of compost. And I'll show you what we use that for here in just a minute. That's for putting plants kind of in storage. Here's our garden. Again, we have to keep this kind of sectioned off for our dogs. They're a little bit destructive right now. We're using the back to Eden method. We've got compost underneath these wood chips. Just look down here, Katie. If you look at the soil beneath all this, we're in our 2nd year here. It's just starting to break down. So it's very good soil under there. And you can see these tomatoes, these were from seed. Everything that you see in this garden except the banana tree is from seed. So we're just experimenting with seed and seeing how it does. It's doing amazingly well. These are tomatillos, and you can see they're already producing very well. The ones to the left are tomatoes, and our beets to the far left are actually ready for harvest. We're getting ready to get these out very soon. The beets are actually big enough we can pull them out. We've got carrots and then other things growing in our little boxes. A lot of these have already gone to seed. We're allowing them to go to seed. And then we've got squash. It's already starting to go up the side. That is a Hopi squash, which is an Indian squash. Starting to go up the side of the fence. And then we just planted a banana tree right here in the middle, just to make it pretty, just for the fun of it. But you can see the squash, the heat's starting to get to the squash. We're in the high 80s today. It's going to be 90s the rest of the week. It's pretty warm on these plants. But if you look back in Old Dirty Possum's original videos, there was nothing here.
And we also got this large water container, which is actually full of water.
It's a 1,000 gallon. And what we do is we run a 1 1/4 inch line from the pond. We'll show you the pond here in a second, all the way up here, and pump this full of water. And that way, when we need water for our garden, we're not draining our pump, our well. We're not draining our well. We've got a pond that's probably got 2 million gallons of water in it, so we might as well utilize that.
And it has all the natural microbes and everything that are occurring in a pond, so it's actually healthier water to water your garden with.
This is a big pile of all our stuff for projects: wood, fencing. We've still got many things we're doing. We've got these little seed trays we got off of Craigslist. That's for starting seeds next year.
Never buy things when you need them. Buy things way ahead of when you're going to need them, and just in case if you see great deals.
I don't know if you remember in Old Dirty Possum's original video, this was nothing but dirt where the water was coming down. We shot it from this other side. The water was just coming down and there was nothing to stop it. So this swale now, and you can see the swale's working beautifully. It's catching, I would say, 95% of the water right here. We still have some coming through, so I'm going to make this swale a little bit bigger and bring it back so it'll just retain that water. But I dug, you can't tell it because of all this growth, and I'm letting this red clover come in just so we can have some nitrogen put back in the soil in here, because there was nothing in here. Again, this is cover crop with hairy vetch, red clover. We have a pecan here that didn't make it. And we've got pecans planted all over. There's a pecan there, there's a pecan over here, pecans up there, that's a pecan. This is all blackberries through here. Again, I had to section that off so the dogs wouldn't get in there. But I put in this area, there is a small ditch dug right where those pecans are that comes down, around through here, and it takes all of this water around here to feed this swale to the outside. So that's how we capture all of that water and don't lose it. It actually stays with the property. There's one of our Anatolians right there. She's a baby. Hey, girl. Oh, that's a good girl. She's 6 months old, and she's probably already 60, 70 pounds. She will top out at 125 to 150, but they are an amazing dog if you want something to protect your animals. They're amazing, and they're great with children. Back here, if you saw this with Old Dirty Possum, this was the one swale we started. This was last year, March. Look back at his other video, and you will not believe the amount of growth we've got in 1 year. This is a peach tree, and we've got everything in here. There's hazelnut. We've got flowers everywhere. Here's a pawpaw, if you're familiar with a pawpaw. This is the pawpaw, if you're familiar with a pawpaw. What I did, these are soybeans. And if you know pawpaws, when they're little babies, they have to have shade. So these soybeans will get up enough, they'll shade this pawpaw and allow it to grow. That's a 2-year-old plant. Here's some blackberries, hazelnut. This is an elderberry that's actually native, and it's going crazy. You can see the depth of this swale behind here, probably 2 feet deep. Here's a plum, Methley plum. Another blackberry. It's just planted out with everything that we could think we could ever want to eat. And we're doing it in the permaculture fashion. We're just planting it. Every 6 feet, we're putting something in the ground. Me and my daughter, Kathleen, put in 600 strawberry plants. And that's an everbearing, so we'll get 2 crops out of that. Next year, we'll have a pint for each strawberry. We'll get about a pint of strawberries in June, and then a pint around September, October.
Tell them about your pre-planting your trees, how these are going to look in another 5-6 years when the big shade trees grow in.
5 to 6 years when these grow up, I'm going to let them get about 8 to 10 feet tall to where I can still pick them pretty easily. And then all the other things will be shaded in that love to grow under partial shade, not total shade. Nothing I can think of likes total shade. These are raspberries right here. You see they're just starting to produce. And this is just the beginning. We are just starting. Rhett's correct. They will get much larger. We don't have all of our really big trees. The pawpaw will be one of the biggest trees. We do have the pecans. This is a pecan. And if I'm not mistaken, this variety gets 30 to 50 feet tall. And it's just a baby. It's an Elliott pecan. But if you look down through the entire set of swales, there's a pecan every 30 or 40 feet. So when these top out at 40 to 50 feet in the air, they'll almost be touching way up in the air, and that'll be your pecans. So
What
we've got
is-
pecans.
That right there, this big bit, is that a fig?
This is poke salad.
Poke salad.
Yep. And that, I'm leaving that. We had such an infestation last year. We didn't get a chance to show you because we were so busy. Such an infestation of the Japanese beetles. If you look here, this is it's a thorny tomato, and I forget what it's called. But the Japanese beetles are just tearing that up. I did not plant that. That's a native plant. So what I'm doing, I'm leaving all the native plants so the Japanese beetles will eat them, like the poke salad, like the thorny tomato plant.
I think in the future you were planning on maybe planting a tobacco plant here or there because of how much bugs prefer to eat tobacco
Yes,
as opposed
exactly.
to other crops.
This right here is a goji. Everyone loves the goji berries. Another hazelnut. This is a pomegranate, something we're trying to grow. It's very hard to grow pomegranates when you have a negative 6-degree temperature, is what we had this year, and it killed them back to the ground. This is a Hanafuyu persimmon, which is supposed to be one of the best tasting persimmons. This is a gumi berry. Another hazelnut. Raspberry, but again, we just planted everything we could think of to plant. Another pecan. This one is from a seedling. It's not grafted. Grafted pecans will give you nuts much faster.
And why do you have all the sticks in your swale?
Oh well, the sticks are there to stop the dogs. One, from stopping them from digging up the trees, and two, to hold some of the wood chips to the swale, because the dogs like to dig in them.
Oh, we're talking about all the wood lined up in the water in the swale.
Oh, I'm doing that to put the nutrients back down in. What it'll do is it'll make it almost like a hugelkultur. What we're going to do eventually, all these swales that you see here, if you'll pan over to the other side, I've already got these full. What we will do here is we'll let this break down, go down to where it's very nice and rich wood, and then we'll put heavy wood on top of it, and just like back there, which you can't see because it's covered with growth, those are hugelkulturs, just like we showed you at the very beginning. We'll mound this side up with fresh dirt right up to that, and we can plant both sides of this. That's a year or two away because we want to let that wood break down and become rich with mushrooms and mycorrhizal fungi. All of that will help all of these plants. So eventually we're going to take the deep part of the swale out. It'll be gone. It'll still gather water as it comes down because it'll have all that wood rotting in the ground. You can see here we've got all the berries. Last year, if you looked at Rhett's video, this was almost barren. But what we did this year, we allowed the mint to grow and just go as crazy as it wanted to go. This is mint. It's because there's so much nutrients in the soil is why it's growing so good now. The grapes, you can see here, they're just starting to produce. But look at how big the grapes are getting. Last year we got no grapes because we had none of this set up. Nothing was capturing water. If you can see here, I've got tons and tons of wood chips. We just put these in. They haven't been in long, so they haven't even started. You can see they haven't even started to break down. And I've only got about 1 inch on there. You'd rather have 3 to 5 inches to start, but I just don't have that much wood chips. It would take God knows how many dump truckloads of wood chips. There's a banana tree. This is another elderberry. And all through here, there's a fig. That is a hazelnut. There's a fig. And then all through here, it's alternated. Fig, pawpaw, fig, pawpaw. A lot of these pawpaws did not make it. They were 1 year seedlings, and you cannot put a pawpaw 1 year seedling out. It will die. The sun will kill it if you're in full sun. If you shade it, you'll be fine. This is a quince. If you looked at one of Rhett's original videos, you remember what you called that video?
Nope.
It was on the other side of the pond, and we'll show you that. That was a little bit of a failed experience, but 2 quinces, if you know what a quince
I think it
is.
was our first video, or second video.
If you look at the video, it's on the, we've only got like 6, so it's pretty easy to look at them. But the 2 quinces that we had live are planted out over here, more banana trees, and this is planted up with a lot of figs. If you look down through there, I've got about 7 different types of figs. There's pecans, those big tall ones are pecans, and then banana trees and hazelnuts down here on the end. If you're wondering why we have this fenced off, again, our dogs, we love them, but they like to dig in our brand new planted plants. When we plant out a lot of plants, they like to play right where we planted. When we put the horse poop or the cow poop, that's where they want to dig.
And we also have acquired a giant rooster.
Oh yes, we have a 6 foot tall rooster.
Hey, you gonna go look over the thing?
Yes. And show where
All
the root
these
cellar is
cinder
going to be.
All these cinder blocks are going to be used to build a root cellar in
Not
the
to fall
ground
into the root cellar.
behind the dam here. That is where the root cellar will go. And that's for when all these trees start producing the fruit they're going to produce. We'll have possibly tons of fruit. And we've got to have someplace cool to keep it. So what I'm going to do, it's going to be almost like you do in Ireland. I'm going to build a root cellar in the ground, and then I'm going to have a living roof on top of it. That will be probably a year to 2 years away, but again, we've got so many other projects we're doing. That one's kind of on the back burner until we get some production of fruit.
And if you take your time and look for good deals over a long period of time, it costs a lot less money in the
It
long
does,
run.
and that's the way we look. All this back swale here on the dam is figs and grapes. That's all it is. If you look very closely, you can see here's a fig right here, and that's a second year fig. I'll find you a grape in a minute. There's another fig. Here's a fig, and you can see we let some of this grow up, and then what we'll do is we'll cut it back and use the chop and drop method and leave it on the top to feed whatever's there. Here's a grape, and you can see the Japanese beetles love our grapes. So that's one of the things they hit. And we just let them. We don't do any, we don't spray anything. We're not going to have anything that's not natural. We're not going to have anything that's not natural just because that's the food we're going to eat. And it's food we're going to sell eventually. You can see these Japanese beetles, sometimes if you can catch them, if you can get them, and especially if you have a lot of fish. We don't have a lot of fish on this side of the pond, but I'll show you later in the video, the other side is where all our fish come in. But if you can catch you a handful of Japanese beetles and then go to the edge of the water, sometimes the fish will come up and eat them. Like I say, there's not many on this side of the water. But occasionally you'll have a fish come up and pop some of the Japanese beetles. We have a lot of predatory bass. The catfish in here are predatory. We've got bluegill. We also have shellcracker, which a lot of people call crappie. Shellcracker and just a red-eared sunfish. That's a shellcracker. I'm trying to think, is there any other? That's pretty much it, what we've got in this pond. And then if you look back here, we've already planted up this section. I won't take you. You want to go back there and see the two ponds?
Sure.
We just did this. This was put in at the very end of last year. So this has not had a lot of time. You can tell, you can still see the ground. We have cover crops in here, but they didn't take everywhere. And that's what happens when you scrape back all the soil and take all the good stuff out of the soil, all the topsoil. I tried to utilize that in every swale so everything would grow. So there's not really much topsoil out here. So you should really do a cover crop right after that. And you can look to the right over there. You can see all the cover crops are starting to die back. Those are all the brassicas. They're starting to die back, and right now the soybeans are just starting to come in. So you always want to have something on your soil. Otherwise, it's just like us with an open wound. You've got a wound. So you want to heal that wound on the soil so everything can grow around it. I did a little experiment back here. It's called a banana circle. We found a great deal on Craigslist. The lady sold us a bunch of banana plants. So what we're doing here, you're supposed to do this 3 foot deep and 6 foot wide, but I didn't have the area, so what I did was I did 3 foot deep, 6 foot long, and about 4 foot wide. This will have nothing but banana trees, and all this to your right of the video, up in there, will be cut out later. That will be used to feed down in here where we're going to compost, because banana trees need a lot of compost. They need a lot of nutrients. So what we do is cut it up, chop it, drop it, and that's where it stays. It rots there, and you actually have your mulch and everything growing right beside where you're going to utilize it. I dug these two ponds because we have a neighbor that owns a pond, and it overflows onto our property. And I built these two ponds to capture the water and just utilize it in the plants back here. So we've got a lot of water-loving plants back here on these two swales. And I'm putting more swales in the back of this dam here also because we have so much water coming through. I'm going to put more swales back here just to plant in. We're going to have swales all over the property. You capture your water, you sink it, and you distribute it into the land. And that way, that's what your roots will go down on your plants. If you plant a plant right into water, 90% of the time it'll die. unless it's a weeping willow, something that really loves water. Cool. And you can look right here, you can see when this gets too high, I've already got it set up. It flows through here, comes down through here, comes right down. That's why I'm going to turn this and go straight to that swell over there and top that one off every time it rains, if we get too much rain. And then I'll have another swell below that to try to capture as much water as we can. All right, and we'll show you where we planted all the original, I think it was 77 apple and pear trees that we got. Show you where we planted those 2 years ago. They are the oldest trees on the property. I'll show you one more thing here on the side. We're trying something new. They're called Jerusalem artichokes. This is them right here. And they're just starting to come in. What I did, that's them right there. That's something that you can eat. It's got a tuber that you can eat. A lot of people call them a fartichoke because it'll give you gas. But it's one of those things, if the end of the world ever comes, a zombie apocalypse, you've got some food to eat down there. All you have to do is dig it up and eat it. Yeah, and they will take over. They give you a beautiful flower. They're part of the sunflower family, and they'll give you a beautiful flower every year. And they keep growing tubers underground. They say they're a little bit invasive, but we don't care. If we're going to eat them, we want stuff that's invasive.
We also promised that we'd show all successes, failures, and process all along the way. So, like you said, in one of my videos, we were taking cuttings from trees and putting them down in coarse sand and doing everything we could to grow new trees out of cuttings. We missed doing a few steps of the process, as we are learning to do this as we do it. We're not experts, we're just total amateurs that are studying a lot and taking our own hand at it. But it's not discouraging. A lot of what I planted in here has actually died and been overtaken by weeds. Some of the plants did survive though, and to be honest, there's no monetary expense that goes into taking your clippings that you're going to clip off anyways and planting them in sand. So just getting a handful of plants that actually did succeed is a success, but on a large scale, most of this ended up being a failure this time around. This fall when we do it again, or next spring when we do it again, we'll probably have much more luck with it. We've learned a lot more techniques, but for right now, we just wanted to show you this did not actually work like we wanted to, but we did get some trees out of it, which means that we did get a minor success in the long run.
The main thing we did wrong is this is in direct sunlight. This should have been in the shade. We never watered this. We left it to nature, kind of like we're doing everything else. We're using what's called a stun method, and I forget the gentleman that coined that phrase. He's on YouTube. It's severe, total, utter neglect, and it's the easiest way to farm. Everything that lives is strong. Now that those 2 quinces, and we had 14 grapes survive also, and I'll show you some of the grapes here in just a moment. But the 2 quinces that survived, they're strong. So they're going to be some of the best plants we have on our property. If you're going to do this, this needs to be in the shade. Your sand needs to be in the shade. We're going to put it over there this year. And you need to have a watering system where it waters at least every day. And they have some systems that water it hourly if you have really, really delicate plantings. We don't want to get into anything like that. We want stuff that's going to be kind of easy for us to just throw out and let it live. We've got figs over here. It's very dense planted over here. And again, I'm leaving every weed that comes of its own volition to grow. Let the bugs eat it. And that way they're not attacking my plants as much. They say that if you leave some of your native plants, you don't have to worry as much about things coming in and eating your plants. And that is true. We found that to be a fact. If you come up here, I saw just the other day, I believe it was.
Oh, we should have gone on that back swell where the peaches are
right here,
coming up.
Get a shot of this. I'm not sure what this plant is, but it is a native plant. Look at the Japanese beetles on the native plant. Let them eat that up, and then pan to the right. We have some cedar rust, which we're going to have on our apples. We're not going to, this apple is actually a Jonah Gold apple. So if you want one that doesn't have cedar rust, don't get a Jonah Gold. But you can see there are some Japanese beetles flying off of this tree. Nowhere near as many as the native plant. So that is very, very good news because we're not losing everything. This is a quince. This is one of the ones, and you can tell the Japanese beetles love the quince. But that is one of the ones that was a success. That is a very strong plant. Another one back here. Another strong plant. You can tell the heat's getting to it because it's killing back some of the leaves. But look at the Japanese beetles. We do have a lot of Japanese beetles, but nowhere near. Last year, there were no leaves on any plants. We could come through here and there wasn't a leaf on the plant because they had eaten it back like a skeleton. Like when you eat a fish and you see the skeleton left, that's what our trees look like. So we have a very large proliferation of Japanese beetles here. And next year we're going to get probably 40 or 50 ducks and see if they will help us to keep back the numbers. A little better than what we've had. As you're coming through, there's apple. We're doing what a gentleman out in Canada did. It's Miracle Farms. He did an apple, a pear, and then a nitrogen fixture. Well, we didn't do many nitrogen fixtures. We're going to. We just haven't done it yet because we've got compost we can throw right on them now readily. But we're eventually going to put in some of the nitrogen fixtures that will help them to where we don't have to fertilize. We're not really looking for a big fruit production right now because I don't have any place built to store it. Here is one. Let me look real quick. It takes me a second to find them. Here's one of the grapes that survived. That's one of the grapes that survived. And if you pan down there, there's another one down here that survived also. We've got them planted all out through the farm. And then what we're going to do is let this grape grow up. This is a persimmon. It's a native persimmon, and I left it. That's why it kind of looks like our rows are off a little bit. We left that just so we'd have a native persimmon. Over here is another Hanafuyu persimmon somewhere. That's a fig. Here it is. This is a Hanafuyu persimmon. So it's going to have persimmons right beside that. These are dogwoods that we're going to have to cut back. We're not sure they survived. When we're using the backhoe to clear a lot of the land, we ran over the roots, and a lot of times you'll lose plants that way, just because of the weight. This is a new addition. Hasn't been out long. It's a firecracker goji. We just planted that last week.
You should give them a bee update.
Oh,
Bees.
here's our bees. And you can tell the bees are happy. They're doing good. We've got to get some of that kudzu. That stuff you see on top of that is a native plant called kudzu. It's very invasive. But if you've got goats or chickens, you've got
Maybe
goats or
standing
chickens,
in front of the bees is a bad decision.
you've got goats or chickens, it
Right
will,
here.
they will eat it, and it's a very high protein. I forget what the percentage protein, but it's very high. Great to see.
And when filming, the bees do not stand in their flight path.
They were swarming one
Don't
day.
exactly appreciate
They were
it.
swarming one day, and we thought they were going to swarm off, so we put a little, what's that called, Katie?
Bee trap?
Bee trap. We put a bee trap up there just to catch them.
Or at least attempt to.
And they didn't swarm. They stayed in their hive. This
They never made any queen
is
cells.
either a plum or a cherry, I cannot remember. But it's doing amazingly well. Last year it looked like it was certain death. But if you just leave stuff alone, it'll either survive or die. And if it dies, it may not be right for your property. I'll give it 2 chances. I'll try it in another spot with a little less sun or a little more water.
This is only marking year 1. It takes about
Yeah.
3 years to establish a permaculture farm completely. So this is why we do a lot of allowing things to grow, die, experiment, and see what takes, because it's got 3 years before we're going to start pulling fruit off things, before we start harvesting each of the plots.
That's if you start with a really big tree, 3 years. If you start with a little, bare root cutting, something that's small, you may have 5 to 7 years. And it takes you about 5 to 7 years to get your soil. They say that's when you'll see the eureka magic moment. Somewhere between 5 to 7, your soil will be right. You can tell we've got leaves that are put on top of everything. They're composting down, making mycorrhizal fungi come to the surface. If you look down in here, when we first started, it was all red clay. But look now, we're just starting to get some beautiful topsoil. And if you can go to a deeper spot, see this part right here is getting hit by total sun, so it's kind of cooked right now. But I don't have a deep spot here, but if you go to a deeper spot, a lot of times you'll find a handful of the worms just sitting there, and that's what you want. See, and again, this just went in maybe 2 months ago. Not even that. These are our hazelnuts. We just got these. They went in maybe 2 months ago. Most of this soil is brand new. It's less than a year old, the leaves. So they haven't had enough time to break down. We'll bring in more leaves this year, more wood chips, and then we'll have even more of the great soil. This had no topsoil in it. Remember, I took all of the topsoil. I've got a pile of topsoil over here and a pile of topsoil on the end down there. That was for dressing this up. So I just put a tiny bit of what I could save on the top of it. And also the trees that I burned down, I put that on top of that also to try to give it a little bit of a nudge. I'll let you keep talking, Rhett. I'm gonna go get some fish food so we can show them the fish.
So, as you can see, there's been a lot that's gone on in the last year, which is why we're making such a long video that encompasses everything at once. We're going to try to make more videos throughout the year and more about individual projects. Like I said, life comes first before videos, and there's been a lot going on, and obviously we've spent a lot of time working on all this, but you know, there's jobs and work and everything else too.
Been a lot of digging. Lots of digging.
Lots of digging. The key thing here to remember is this whole property is how many acres?
7?
8 acres. The pond takes up,
An
the
acre.
big pond takes up more than an acre of the land by itself. So this is great for permaculture. You know, in reality, everything that's grown here will probably trade with other farmers around the area to get other things, like when we need meat or we need extra eggs or anything. But this is getting to be about the size of a permaculture farm that can actually sustain a family. You know, a lot of people will set up permaculture in their backyard and expect it to sustain their entire family. And to be honest, it's not going to. It'll supplement, but if you think about it, there's so many different types of farms that specialize in so many different types of things because there's so many things that a family needs to survive. This farm has a lot of it, but it's still only a 7-acre farm here.
This is the, right here.
Obviously, I haven't been here in a while because there was a few things that I hadn't noticed. Mostly, it's my work that's in the way. But we have replanted a lot of trees. We are trying to replant a lot more of the local plants that grow naturally in the area. Sometime this winter or fall, we are planning on making our mushroom slurry and coming out through these woods where there's so much deadfall in the woods and everything, spraying our mushroom slurry around and starting to grow different types of mushrooms.
If you feed your fish every day like I do, they'll come to you like they're your pets. As soon as they hear me walk up, they know food's here. As will your geese. Those are mostly bluegill. We put in about 1,000 bluegill, and I put in 100 catfish. You can see the catfish there, and 100. Those are grass carp. Some of the really big ones you see. Those are an Asian grass carp that has been a triploid carp that has been sterilized. You can't have any fish of those in North Carolina that are not sterilized because they reproduce so quickly. If you get caught with one that's not sterilized, it's like a $10,000 fine. But that's one right there. They're about 2 to 3 feet long, and they're probably 20 to 30 pounds. They eat, when we bought this property, it was so eaten up with parrot's feather and duckweed, and you can look that up on the internet what that is. The pond was dying almost every day and stinking. It smelled like sewage. But once you put some grass carp in and dig your pond out like I did, you have to dig a bunch of the old nutrients. When we bought this farm, it had 100 trees around the pond that were just falling, dropping leaves, dying in the pond, and that's death to your pond. That's just too much of a nutrient load. You're gonna have a nutrient load from your fish, but I'm gonna eat most of these fish. And that's what they're there for. That's for us to eat. We put them in strictly for that purpose. What was I talking about? I got off track there.
Fish.
Oh yeah, and digging the pond out. You just dig the pond out. I was told by many people it would never work. We'd never bring the pond back to life. It was a 30-year-old pond, been here 30 years. The trees had grown. We had 75-foot poplars growing in the pond that were dying and falling. I just took the backhoe, knocked them over, pulled them back, got them out of the water, pulled all the leaves out, and then I dug out as far as the backhoe would reach and pulled all of that nutrient load back up onto the bank, and that's why the grass is so green everywhere. It's full of fish poop. All of this is full of fish poop. And then I just took the back of the backhoe and tamped it down. Then the pond, it took it almost a year. I put this fountain in, which the fountain is oxygenating the pond every day. That fountain is a little half horsepower. We just did it off of 110. It's better if you can do it off of 220. It'll use less electricity. But we didn't want to run a 220 line down there. But that moves 24,000 gallons an hour. So every hour, 24,000 gallons, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That pumps. I've never had it freeze. We're in North Carolina. zone 7A. Never had it freeze, and it always oxygenates your pond. So that actually helped to get rid of the duckweed. Also the grass carp. They eat their weight, or possibly a little more than their weight, every day in the stuff that's growing on top of the pond. And now they're eating my fish food because there's no more grass and stuff. You'll see them some days when this grass goes down in the water, they'll come up and they'll be tugging on the grass because they want to eat grass. But because there's no grass, they're eating what I'm throwing out.
You'll hear a lot of people say things like, if you're going to start a permaculture farm, it's best to just leave the land alone, don't do anything with it. What a lot of people don't realize is that's not an untrue or true statement. It is good to be able to farm and land the way it's set up. But like this property, the previous owners of this property had done a lot of abuse to the land. They had dug things up, left trash sitting around, and we had to do a lot of cleanup.
That was a bass. That is the first bass I've seen that size. Look at that bass.
I think I can see him in the
That is
video.
about a 3-pound bass. Can you see him in the water?
So.
Hope you can. There's about a 3-pound bass that's swimming back and forth here. We've never seen one that big. That's the first time we've ever seen it on video. Still right over there to the left. You can
It's
see
hard
it.
to see in my
I'm
video.
not sure you can see it. Most of those are catfish, but that is about a 3-pound bass right there.
I'll know when we go inside if I can see him in the
Wow,
video.
we hope we've got him on video for you because that's the
That's the
biggest one I've seen
catfish.
in the pond. We put all these fish in unless they survived from where we had the fish kill. We had a bad fish kill because of the duckweed. There's no oxygen in the water. When you have too much duckweed, it dies, it goes down, it rots, it takes all the oxygen out of the water and it comes back up.
I love the catfish.
What's that?
The
There's
catfish.
catfish out there, but this
I
is
do.
a
I
bass.
see them all. Yeah, I know. There's bass over
You
there.
can see the size of him.
I
Wow,
can
he is
see.
pretty. If he would just come up a little bit, our water's a little bit
There are a
murky.
couple over there. You can see which ones are bass and which ones are catfish.
Well, most of those are carp.
That's a carp.
Yes.
Okay.
This is a bass. That's why I'm so amazed. You see the side of him? He looks like a shark.
Just ignore everything I
It's
say.
silver on his side when he comes
Gotcha.
up. That is a bass. I cannot believe he's this close and he's not scared.
You'll
must have
probably be
been
able to
some of
see
this-
him in the video.
Must have been eating some of this food. Maybe we'll be able to see him. I hope so.
It's just too sunny for me to see the video on my screen.
You see a goose here out on the water, and here's one on a nest behind you. You want to shoot her on the nest? Sure. She's right there. She's sitting on a nest trying to raise her eggs. Yeah.
Just as quiet as can be. I didn't even see
You
her.
don't want us to bother her, so don't get too close.
I'm not.
But that's her nest. She's trying to raise some babies. And if they have babies, we let them have them. If they don't, they don't. It's nature.
So what we were saying before, on a lot of farms, you know, they're going to tell you in setting up permaculture not to do too much to the land, to work naturally with it, follow the natural contours. What a lot of people won't know is when we got this property, it had been so poorly kept. The pond was completely overgrown and dying. There was just giant pits that were dug into the earth where the previous occupants were throwing trash, and so we had to do a lot of work to literally dig up those holes,
Did a
get the
lot of
trash
cleanup.
out, separate things out, save the pond so it didn't die from all the years and years and years of total neglect, and you know, basically clean up the property. So it meant that we did have to do a lot of work on the property to establish land that we could do a permaculture on. So there's always different sides of, two sides of a coin. You know, sometimes you don't have to do anything when you move in. You just go ahead and dig, get out there, make your swells, and you're good to go. The ground's already nice and fertile, and that's a perfect situation. That's what you want to have. But not every property is like that, and sometimes you work with what you get. And we were really lucky to get a good property like this, but it did need a lot of work to bring it back from where it had been abused and neglected for decades.
If you'll pan across the pond, Katie, if you look to the left, you see the native woods there, and then pan to the back. See all those woods back there behind all of our apple trees. That is what the property on that side of the pond looked like. It was, you couldn't even walk through it. It was so thick with trees and barbed wire that the previous people had left and junk. They had, I guess the guy owned a window place or a roofing place. They dumped shingles and windows, and we had to dig that out, put it in a dump truck and haul it to the dump. But everything is finally coming back to life. What? Everything is coming back to life. My wife's calling us. We got to go. Just wanted to show you an update on the property. And again, I'll let Rhett sign off with you.
Well, this is Old Dirty Possum signing off. We'll see you again soon. Hopefully not before another year has passed.